Hi guys, how you doing? How you doing? Alright, I decided to use the background for now. Alright, I will, need to get a dedicated background for this. Please excuse me, I'm sorry. Alright now, alright, are you ready? Alright guys, are you ready? Alright, now coming down from the rafters to your house. Alright, she's always groovy, never cheesy. You won't get this from a bird. Alright, she's arriving now. It's time for the Indumati Super Show. Alright, now for today's reading, I will be reading a story I made up. Yeah, I made these stories, by the way. The Dungeon Architect's Designs #1. Ooh. Alright, now let's start off the story strong, shall we? There is a man by the name of Grand Mason who had a very sad life in his dingy, broken down old house. It was stuck with his family ever since graduating high school, and his abusive father wouldn't let him get a job because he had stuff to take care of at home. As basically told no matter what he did, that he didn't deserve his own life, his own job, or anything. Well, his dad took no responsibility for the house and forced him to clean up after him. Even after his dad died, he was unable to get a job due to the mental toll affecting his mind, leaving his home unkept. And echoes of his dad and his mind still mocking him. Just like the time he was a kid, and he built some mazes and dungeons on pen and paper to some of his old friends at school who thought they were cool. But his old man, decided, to burn them and destroy them in a rage and said real men to take responsibility and not mess around with games and fairy tales like some lazy fritty bums. Whoa, you can't say that on Twitch. They are. So he was living alone in a dingy. So Grand Mason was living alone in a dingy house, unable to pay bills until one day he fell asleep, and a fire started in the microwave because it wouldn't stop running out of nowhere, which burned his house down with him inside of it. He died horribly, painfully, unloved, neglected and only a few family members showed up at his funeral, who remembered happier times back in when he was little and showed them all kinds of mazes and dungeons and monsters they designed for that grand design for a game. He made up. But the man's father had long since destroyed the artwork in a fire, citing real men don't play with such things. They left an old. His family, however, left an old notebook of previous designs he left for them in his coffin. As he was lowered into the ground, and they felt sorry that he lived such a horrid life that they had no idea about it. That they had no idea about. Alright, sorry. His soul floated into the void between dreams and awake. And then he saw a man who looked like a construction worker, who looked like a naked mole rat mixed with a foreman, as well as another entity that resembled a woman, although she was like a massive Luna moth in humanoid form. The Luna moth entities then said, you responded to our call. The construction mold then said, Miss Luna told you Miss Luna told me to give you a blessing to lay a good foundation for you. The soul was confused. He then said, but I am dead. What blessing could I obtain now? Besides, I have never been blessed before. Luna embraced the soul, calming it and soothing it in her arms, and flew Finky, which gave a calming aura. The mole man then said, I heard you made all sorts of cool things back when you were a kid, eh? But your dream didn't quite come true due to the evils of your world. That's why I shall give you the power to design the dungeons of your dreams. The Luna Moth woman then said, and I shall give you the power to connect and make monsters, friends, and spirits after your own imagination. The soul then replied, who are you people? Well, why am I here? Luna then said, our apologies. My name is Luna. The mole man then said, and I am the one known as the Constructor. One who watches over the rise and fall of civilizations across time and space. Luna then replied, and you are Grand Mason, a precious child in the sight of our goddess. Alright, now this is referencing the goddess of creation. The Constructor then laughed and said, we are beings that serve the goddess of creation and what you might refer to as some sort of guardian spirits. And then Luna replied, and Mr. Grand, we wish to have you take part in the Isekai dream system, be reborn in another world. Grand then replied, but why? Luna then said, because part of our mistress's will is that unfortunate sad souls in the world, especially kinder and more humble souls, If unfulfilled, because it is part of what our mistress's will that is that all right, come on, please. Lyndon said because it is part of our mistress's will that it is that, sad, unfortunate, sad souls in the world, especially kinder, more humble souls, when unfulfilled dreams should, be able to do that. And Grandad said, it depends. What do I have to do there? Lyndon said, our blessing will give you the power to do great things. However, there's no major requests or orders to fulfill. You're free to do whatever you choose to do. The instructor then said, to make or break civilization, to build, to destroy, it's up to you. Luna then said, to forge friendships and alliances or not, it's up to you. The stray soul of Gran then said, very well, I accept. Luna then said, oh, and one more thing before you go. The constructor gave Gran back his old designs and pictures of what he once made. The soul looked happy and said, thank you. Luna then said, they were important to you long ago, so he thought it would give you a bit of a flash of inspiration like back then. The soul took it into his hands and held it lovingly. Luna and constructor then opened a portal for him in the center, and Luna then said, good luck out there. And Gran smiled and went inside and crossed into the boundaries of a new world. Oh, man. Alright, hold on for just a second. Mr. Gran woke up in a small meadow in the forest, surrounded by several beautiful flowers, many resembling wild daisies and blazing stars, and a few scattered trees about. He then saw some strange-looking animals that resembling large gray squirrels nearby, and a small pond nearby. He saw which near it he saw creatures that looked like large male steers with spotted brown and white fur on it that was slipping water. Nathan looked in amazement. Such a place would be a good location to make a base, but he didn't want to disturb the natural order, for he found it quite beautiful. He then heard a cry ring out in the forest region. It sounded like a young girl crying out for help. Gran knew what he had to do. He'd had to help the young lady, so he ran off in the scream's direction. He heard the sounds of battle as he traveled forth, and he saw some men in white and gold armor with blood-red capes coming towards an elf woman and someone older who was scared for their lives. From these men as they were attacking the as they were attacking the people the elves were traveling with, and they were losing the fight. Gran heard a male older elf say, "We cannot allow them to obtain a sacred key." The knight kicked the last of resistance aside and drew close with swords. No, the knights kicked the last of resistance aside and drew close with their swords. Gran knew it looked bad for the elves. A voice in his mind, an image of the constructor's words echoed in him, saying, "What will be your foundation, kid?" Gran knew what he must do. He jumped down from the hill and put himself before the knights and a young elf and a woman to protect them. The captain of the knights sneered at this and said, "Anyone who gets in our way is the enemy of the goddess." Yeah, the cult of protagonism believes they're worshipping the goddess of creation as well. Yeah, it's a whole big thing in the lore, yeah. Alright, now. Yeah. No, come on now. Come on now. Frickin' OBS, what did you do? Frickin' OBS, why did you disconnect? Come on now. Stupid ass OBS, come on. Ah! Alright, I'll have to start over from now. I'll have to start over from where we, disconnected. The knights kicked the last of the resistance aside and drew close with their swords. Gran knew it would look bad for the elves. A voice in his mind and the image of the constructor's word echoed in him. Well, be your foundation, kid. Alright, now, Gran knew what he must do. He jumped down from the hill and put himself before the knights and the young elf and a woman to protect them. The captain of the knights sneered at this and said, "Anyone who gets in our way is an enemy of the goddess." Yeah, they're talking about the gods of creation. Yeah, they do worship them, but the Church of Protagonism are evil. Yeah, I might explain that later. But basically they're Basically, they're not really worshipping the goddess as she's intended to be worshipped. The enemy knights drew near. Gran knew he could summon a monster. He decided to summon his first monster. Powerful, bat-like, demonic, vampire-like, humanoid, clad in a bat-themed armor bikini outfit. Oh yeah, armored bikini. And having purple and black bat wings and called her forth. The older elf gentleman winced at this, but the bat lady and said, I, the wings of night, Bathilda, Alucarda Bathilda, draw near. Master, what shall we do? Brandon said, we must protect the elves from these guys. The captain knight responded, summoning demons, surely a sign of blasphemy, get them. Alucarda, however, blasted a dark blast of wind that swept the enemies up in a grim miasma that burned their lungs and rotted their flesh, and made them fall one by one. Oh wow, we're getting into the edgy stuff. The captain, however, broke formation and charged for Graham with a flying leap. However, Graham saw that he could create a trap, so he created a steel wire trap that sliced and cut apart the knight's captain. The two remaining knights were shocked by this. One of them said, "No, Captain Hubert." One of them drew a sword and said, "I will avenge you." And then both, charged in, and then both charged in. However, Gran created a hole beneath them that dropped them into a pit of spikes that impaled them before sealing itself back up. The enemy knights have been defeated. In fact, it was easy. Gran assumed that they were more used to fighting those who couldn't resist or defend themselves rather than anyone with much skill. That's where him and his servants are much stronger and cleverer. He wasn't sure which was true. The old elf man then said, "You protected us. Who are you, and how are you able to summon monsters?" The elf lady then said, and you seemed like some sort of and you seem to have some sort of trap master skill as well." Brian gave some healing potions to Alucarda to the people who were hurt, who gave them to the people who were hurt and injured. Luckily, her and Gran were able to cure most of them before it was too late. Gran said to the older elf and the young elf that who were clad in green and black, and the older elf wearing a long robe that had a styled leaf-like symbol on his back, and the young woman being clad in a short skirt and light feminine armor, and carrying a large wand that was styled like a butterfly. "I am Grand Mason. I am a dungeon maker. I heard you were in trouble and came to help you." The elf woman then said, "That explains your odd skills. There aren't many like you left in this world. Most of them were hunted down by the Church of Protagonism long ago." The old man then says, maybe you can help us out, actually." The elf woman then said, this could mean potentially aligning with someone who has ties to the Dark Lord." The man then replied, Gale answer, "Be reasonable. If he can build dungeons, he can protect the key." The elf woman then said, "First we need to make sure, First we should make sure." Then she took out a crystal ball and asked Gran to lay his hands on it. She was expecting some sort of dark magic or something, but only saw a clear night sky under the moon, and saw a tower being built to the heavens that protected many. She then said, "A divine sign from the gods of creation." Well then, Mr. Graham. My name is Robin Gildancer, and this is my grandpa, Lord Gildancer. May refugees that fled home because the Knights of Protagonism claimed the gods of creation had need of the sacred key to the celestial realm. They said it was for a perfect world and necessary to stop the Dark Lord. However, the Knights do little but do evil in the name of their quest. They burnt our village when we refused them and have chased us down to kill us to obtain it. And that's why we ask you: are you in league with them or the Dark Lord? The Dark Lord? Grand Mason then said, "I only heard about protagonism from you. I am from very far away, you see." Lark then said, "In that case, we have need of your service. We cannot pay much for making the dungeon for us. However, if it is truly capable of protecting our people, we should be grateful." Robin then said, "I can even offer myself to you if that's acceptable as your slave." She said she was very distraught about this, and Grandson said, "I have no need of such things, and you don't need to worry about the pay. I'll do it. For your people, as it seems you are deeply in trouble now. You decide to use an ability called Survey and another called Analysis to find suitable land, and to look into the elves and their needs." Robin noticed he had some sort of magic and was cautious. Grandin said, "I think the metal from earlier would make suitable land. After all, it seems off the beaten path. As for your needs, it's perfect. A nice clear area where with plenty to hunt and gather while you have clean water and I can summon fairies and elementals since you guys have talents in regards to those. Nark then said, but that's a lost art. How? Brandon said, I think it has something to do with Miss Luna's blessings. Robin wondered what he meant by Luna. It sounded familiar to her, but she realized Lady Luna, the guardian of dreams, but in that case, let us go. Alright, despite the earlier hiccup earlier, I think this is going up pretty well. Soon they reached the meadow, which the forest seemed to open to lead them both there. Brandon said, I think a stronger variant of the Lost Woods puzzle would be a perfect trap for intruders, while being welcoming to beings who have connections to fairies. Lark was confused and said, what do you mean? Brandon said, it's a puzzle that basically sets up a maze of multiple paths where to get to the proper path one must listen for music down the way. Oh, please, come on, stop jamming up my throat, please. However, I can modify it to not include the music, that way it'll be harder. While those who are connected with the dungeon registry will have no trouble and be led to it immediately. However, whoever you guys want to come here under your orders. Alright, now. And will be led to it immediately, or whoever you guys want to come here under your orders. Robin then said, you can really do that. Brand started setting it up already. With his powers, he made a magic maze in the woods that led all over the forest using a magical illusionary frog to set it up. For monsters, I set up fairies and elementals of things like wood, wind, and water. Then he then summoned some dryads resembling beautiful tree women with bark-like skin fused with trees, sylphs with beautiful, colorful butterfly-like wings and clad in dresses like the wind and flowers, and undines that controlled the fog and rains and could purify water with magic orbs and douse things in the climate-controlled rain, which the sylphs could work with to summon harsh storms while working together with the dryads. Who also controlled various wooden oakmen to act as defensive guards. The monsters were strangely friendly towards the elves, despite many of them having reservations about it at first. Alright. In fact, some of the elves would go on to tame some of them and command them, as if awakening to lost ancient arts they once possessed, and the dryads would even providing fruits and undines providing clean water for them. Lark then responded, incredible, is this all of it? Brandon said, this is just the first defensive layer of the plan. Robin then said, there's more, but it's already so much. Brandon said, I will also give you magic items too. They will help you to summon creatures, and some of them are weapons enchanted with magic to help you defend yourselves. They then saw flutes for summoning fairies when under pressure, and staffs that could command plants, and bows tipped with runes that can enchant arrows with magic of the choice of the caster. Some of them which even included rapid fire shots, and some that not even needing normal arrows, or wands infused with the magic of the force that could turn people into plants. He even created devices that created an illusionary ward that made the village he set up for them seem invisible and non-existent to people even by the touch and senses even. The village itself was a treetop village made of carved wood and orchards of plants and running water, fused with the natural-looking gates and rails and fortifications. Even houses had doors that opened into trees that led to portals and subspaces inside of tree-like houses they could dwell in. He even made elementals and monsters work as security forces while maintaining the environment. Revenant said, it's enough already, surely, however, Grandin said. And that's just your people's living quarters. I intend to go all out on the actual dungeon to protect the key. The key, he observed, looked like a shining green, magical gemstone. He needed to get serious about this, as it's important to keep it out of the reach of dangerous people or greedy adventurers. Gren made sure he had clearance from Lark and Robin as he set up some more aggressive monsters and dangerous traps. Robin gave him the go-ahead. Lark was curious to see what he could do himself. Alright, please stop jamming up, please. Alright, let's keep going. Then Grand showed it. Then Grand showed the temple what he could make. It was massive, like a huge giant cathedral of nature and itself fused with a mighty fortress. In fact, the paths that ran through it were like a park at the entrance, which led to a garden-like world maintained by invisible fairies and elemental spirits that were designed to be friendly to the elves and those they protect, but a threat to any enemy. Madding plants, powerful wild eldritch seeming fey creatures merged with wood and leaves and flowers, and even the sun, clouds, fog, and rain, and butterflies and moonlight. Dark caverns using mushroom-like fairies and bat-like creatures that could confuse and suck blood, and giant spiders that lurk around the corner and ambush. And then it had three tall levels full of revolving paths controlled by switches and halls maintained by maid-like Silkies whom the elves made their familiars. Who the elves made familiars of them while allowing them to maintain the dungeon, since they liked their cleaning magic. And puzzles that resolved around letting a giant ball break through the floor. There were multiple webs that led to a swamp-like environment in the basement, which was full of swamp-like fairies resembling things like frogs and dragonflies and alligators and lily pads and pond scum. And in the boss room, which needed a key, there was a giant golem that could reanimate itself from rock and wood, controlled by a clever gnome craftsman who protected the only way but to the key. And the key itself was hidden by a mini boss. That was a giant, and the key to the boss room was itself protected by a mini boss that was a giant Alderaun-like fairy resembling a Venus flytrap. All of it rock solid. The elves themselves got along with every creature here and trained themselves and their familiars to be stronger and to bond in a training hall near the village and outside a dungeon to act as a double security force. Robin herself had already become a powerful spirit caller and Lark trained to grow strong and learn powerful magic thanks to Graham also giving advanced magic books as well. Robin then said, "Mr. Graham, you went all above and beyond for us." Brandon said, "Do you think I should do even more?" Lark then laughed and said, "If you go any harder, I don't think we could keep up. In fact, many people would think you're a hero. You're a hero for all of it." Robin then agreed. "Hey, Mr. Graham," she said seriously but sweetly, "take a break, okay? You've been at it nonstop." Brandon said, "I need to make sure everything is perfect," but Lark and Robin insisted that he rest at the end that he had helped set up. Alacarda was pleased with this too. She then said, "Master, you did a lot of cool stuff for them." Brandon said, I think I should redouble the illusion magic." He was seemingly rather always on, although Alacarda was making loving eyes at him. She sighed, wondering to herself if he was always on like this, and she said, "Master, I think it'll be fine. Why not relax a bit? Surely you're tired." Oddly, though, Grant felt no tiredness, yet then he patted Alucard and said, "All right, I'm just worried I didn't put everything in it through its proper paces." Alucarda then pat his head and said, "Hey, it'll be okay. Honestly, you don't need to worry about anyone. They already love your work so far, so doesn't it feel good?" He agreed, and it did. Alucarda then put a blanket over him and said, "Sleep now." Brandon said, okay, I guess we'll know if heroes come how things will work out." When he woke up, Robin greeted him with breakfast, and Alucarda greeted him with tea. Brandon went for the breakfast first, and Alucarda leered back at Robin as if jealous. And then Graham took the tea and said, "Both of you are so thoughtful, thank you." Alucarda smiled and said, "No problem, Master." Mr. Grandin said, "You don't have to call me that, just Gran will do." Alucard agreed, and Robin said, "Heroes are coming. We saw them try their hand at the illusion mage in that Lost Woods puzzle." Grandin looked into it with his own security. Sure enough, there were several adventurers in a small group on the screen. The main leader, a swordsman, said, This new dungeon just popped up not too long ago. The church reported there's dangerous monsters in the area following their failed attack, and their leader fears it could be the return of the Dark Lord." The female sorcerer of the group said, "Because they failed to get the key from the elves," the shield bearer of the group then said, "Strange though, right? This dungeon only started to exist a couple of days ago. there's already so many strong monsters on top of it. I think we're lost. Every path leads nowhere, and the monsters keep swarming us with magic. Then one of the dryads came out and attacked the group by throwing a bunch of explosive apples on them. That knocked the shield bearer aside and struck the sorceress hard enough to send her flying. The swordsman tried to fight the dryad off with a flame slash, but an undying appeared supporting the dryad and hit him with a high pressure water jet that knocked him down the path and causing him to be separated from the party. The sorceress then said, "No, we can't die here." The tank tried to get up, but it was bound in vines and branches. Then the sorcerer, in desperation, tried to get out the escape crystal and said, "We have no choice. We have to retreat." The shield bearer then said, "I know, right? These monsters are way too strong for a level. Where did they even come from?" The party then warped away, all three of them. Robin then said, "Should we let them go?" Gran thought for a moment and said, That was more effective than I thought it was. That was more effective than I thought it would be." Robin then said, They clearly got sent away. They clearly got sent packing." She laughed a little bit. "First invasion repelled." Gran wondered if the adventurers wouldn't tell others, but he was surprised. They seemed to be taking orders from the church. Gran decided he needed to investigate this more. Robin then said, Mr. Graham, are you worried? You seem worried. Is everything okay?" Brandon said, "How much damage? Anyone hurt?" Grant smiled a bit and said, "How much damage? Is anyone hurt?" He tallied up the losses and damage, but it was minimal. He then said, "I like this result." Robin then said, a bit sad, "It's a shame they got away." Grandin said, "How strong are they?" Robin then said, "A small B rank group. They're pretty strong in skill. A rank or higher would be considered stronger, though." He wondered how many A rank or higher there were and if they would be a problem. He decided to meet with Lark back in the library. Lark then said, "Haze and hires are scarce these days. After all, adventuring is dangerous works, and most of the guilds are under church control. So by that estimate, you've created a very strong dungeon that is not easy to penetrate by any means, let alone clear. In fact, a high rank dungeon means few will attempt it, and it will spread to the elite that something powerful is coming. I wouldn't be surprised if they really did think it was I wouldn't be surprised if they did think it was I wouldn't be surprised if they really did think it was even the return of the Dark Lord they feared so much." Grant thought about this. It could be troublesome if the church thought him a villain and knew his face. Alright, hey Cyberzone. He decided he would make a mask to disguise himself later as part of his plans. Lurk then said, "Oh, and I would like to thank you. A strong dungeon is good for our people. In fact, it's fantastic. Now, how about you head to the mountains next? The dwarves have a problem with keeping their keys safe and are holed up and holding the line, but it won't be long before they're conquered. I'll give you a letter for my old friend there." Gran took the letter respectfully and read it. He then put it in his item box, which was part of his skill set, which Gran learned was a common skill among many. Gran pondered spatial magic a bit. He wondered if he could create his own personal dungeon. In fact, the pop-up said he told him he could create a subspace dungeon. He could take it and make a large-scale dungeon. He could make a large-scale dungeon inside and store sponsors inside. He tested it by calling a la carte inside of it, and he noted that it existed in its own space-time. However, Gran wanted a more permanent physical space to make a name for himself. Lark warned that the mountain path was under human control and thus church orders. However, Gran had a plan. He wished to pass himself on his adventure to gain information and build a reputation enough to get elite access to his opponent's inner workings. He considered setting out tomorrow and leaving the dungeon in Lark's hands, since he knew he was the wiser among elves in their acting later. And Gran knew with his age he shouldn't do much fighting and would be advising and doing management instead, and only engage if necessary. Lark then said, "You think age will keep me down?" Robin then said, "Your health." Lark then said, "I can nuke him, just like the young ones try." Robin then said, "Please consider it might be bad if something happened to you. After all, our people rely on you for what you've taught them." Lark then said, "Alright. Well, I'll keep going it. But first, Mr. Graham, make sure you're prepared, yeah?" Rand decided to spend some time doing some final fine tuning before getting ready to leave. All right, now. Meanwhile, at the Church of Protagonism, the adventurers that escaped came in and hurt, battered, and gave the report. Their leader then said, "We have a big problem in the new dungeon that appeared in the Great Endless Forest is potentially S-rank. The head priest, a man in a blue and white, the acting head priest, a man in a blue and white clergy robe with a monocle and a bishop-like hat like a chess piece, then said, what, but how? It's literally just appeared out of the blue and it's S-rank?" He thought to himself, that means the Dark Lord is already making their move. However, we have thin resources due to looking for the 7 gems of the 7 virtues. If one of them is there, then the elves are in the dungeon. That means they have made contact with the Dark Lord. We have no choice but to consider that all the option. We have no choice but to consider them all. We have no choice. Oh, come on now. Please stop getting tongue-tied, please. We have no choice but to consider all our options to obtaining them, aside from the one we already possess that is in the king's hand, which could have, and we know that, and it's possible they could have already fallen into the hands of our enemies. The leader of the adventurers said, "But sir, the only S-ranker left who's available is the acting head priest," and said, "The people's heroine, the Valkyrie. However, until we confirm the threat, we cannot just send her out." The adventurer then said, "We'll talk to the guild about sending scouts." They quickly got healed by the local nuns in exchange for a small donation, and then left to talk to the guild leader about this. The head priest wondered if maybe, just maybe, the adventurers were exaggerating, but he couldn't deny he had sent a team under the church to get the key. That the team he sent under the church to get the key had not returned. Oh, excuse me. He suspected the worst, that something might have went wrong when they fought the elves to obtain it. However, the dungeon suddenly appearing in their territory so quickly, and as if in a couple of nights, I would suggest someone was around who could make dungeons. And that someone may be in league with the Dark Lord, or maybe is the Dark Lord Arachne herself. Whatever it turned out to be, he needed to be cautious of whatever vile, evil, monstrous creature this could be. He just needed to confirm it first. Luckily, the guildmaster is a little friend of his, so surely there wouldn't be a problem. But he worried that his influence wasn't as effective as it used to be in some of the smaller towns, such as near the mountains where the church wasn't widely accepted. He then sighed and said, "I wish we had the resources, but maybe we can send some of our A-rank paladins and clerics to see for themselves, and maybe we can work together to investigate it with the scouts." After all, we need to be careful here. The guildmaster came by later. The guildmaster was a gruff older man with a beard who was an experienced yet retired berserker. He then said, "What is it you want now?" The head priest then said, "They made you aware, right?" The guildmaster boasted and said, "Those guys are amateurs. We're sending some real fighters out there." The head priest then said, "Actually, we need a scout. We need a scout now. We need to be careful. We're talking about something potentially dangerous." The guildmaster then replied almost mockingly, They probably got in over their heads with a puzzle and overwhelmed by it all. Or after all, they mentioned some sort of magical maze?" The acting head priest then said, "Must be some sort of elf magic, maybe. I am concerned because the team I sent to get the key should have got it by now." The guildmaster smiled a bit and said, "Well, very well. We'll send a scout out there, but it's up to you guys to provide support and check out the place. After all, we received reports that the dungeon is quite deep." The priest was unconcerned with this and had a tough paladin and a high-ranking cleric accompany one of the adventure guild's strongest A-rank fighters and A-rank scout with an assassin thief background. Then, when they were given orders by the high priest, who said, "This is important. We need to know what we're dealing with and how strong." Ah. Alright, sorry, Alright, hold on for just a minute. Later, alright now. Later, the head priest A-rank team made it through the entire Lost Woods puzzle, but they were already worse for wear and running low on resources. Not to mention that Paladin was poisoned and the priestess was already running low on mana. There were a lot of strong monsters, including screaming mandragores that got added not too long ago by Brandon, and more venomous insects that make honey for the elves known as killer needles. New constantly swarmed and poisoned the team, and they saw a huge fortress before them and a seemingly empty area before it. The paladin said, "Where are the elves? Where's the key? Surely we can't take much more." The scout then said, "There's powerful magic in the area. They could be nearby." I'm more concerned about that fortress, though. It looks like a massive tree-like palace, and it's almost as big as Yggdrasil itself. The priestess then chugged a mana potion and was exhausted, but still willing to fulfill the mission. This place is rough, and the whole maze was definitely not there earlier. Alright now. In fact, I think there's more monsters than the report said. The fighter then screamed, the fighter then replied in a gruff but rather upset voice. If I have to fight another Mandragora, I feel like I too will scream. And the scout then said, "There's powerful fairies too with strong magic. Worse, they're organized. I noticed they work together with monsters and use tactical tricks to fight against us. That is definitely unusual monster behavior." The fighter then said, "Shall we head into the fortress next? I feel like something is there. The key could be inside." The team limped on and took their time to recover before heading inside. But what they found was even more nightmarish, despite what the opening hall being so open and beautiful suggested. As they passed through the garden, they were still being chased by sylphs and elves working together to shoot them with magic arrows and blades of wind. Then the manning plants and dryads nipped and snapped and sent poison and exploding apples at them. The paladin was already downed and eaten and was captured and swallowed by manning plants known as a Venus death trap. And he was alright now. The scout vomited when he was ripped in half by the man-eating plants, and the fighter tried his best to, fight the elf in close quarters. But then the elf played a flute and summoned the sylphs to blast a harsh gale that blew him away while hitting him in the shoulder with a poisoned arrow, forcing his retreat down into a nearby cavern, thinking they could lose the elves there. The cleric panicked as he started to slump over from the poison. The cleric panicked as the fighter slumped over from the poison and tried to heal him as they wandered in this small cave-like area, but Mechanids appeared and started blasting with paralyzing spores. When blasted paralyzing spores on them and left the cleric unable to move, and around the corner the fighter escaped them from the Mechanids and ran to a giant man-eating bloody widow spider. It was webbed up and dragged off into the shadows where the scout could still hear his screams as the bloody widow started to liquefy his insides and suck them out. The cleric tried to get away by struggling against her paralysis, but the Myconids quickly poisoned her to death with clouds of toxic spores which she choked on and vomited her blood and guts out until she died. The scout lost their whole team to the fortress. It was a highly dangerous dungeon, and the scout had a feeling they just barely scratched the surface, and then the elf came towards her ready to fire an arrow towards her heart, and the Myconid was ready to paralyze her from behind, and the other path had a massive man-eating spider behind it. So the scout decided to use their magic crystal to escape. The scout quickly ran to give their report to the church. Give eyes full of fear, and then quickly said in panic and fear of giving your report. The scout recounted how the team that was assigned to her was wiped out, and how there was a fortress in the Lost Woods maze that wore them down, and how the elves were not only working with monsters but could also summon fairies to their side, and had helped take them down. That priest was in a panic. Elves and monsters working together, a massive forest fortress. And the Lost Woods Woods maze was protecting it too. And the priest was horrified. The church quickly used the crystal to make sure she was telling the truth, which glowed green for truth. The head priest quickly let the guild and the church know the horrors, and the forest of the Lost Woods was bad enough that it was at least A-rank, and the fortress was clearly protecting the key was an S-rank dungeon if he ever heard one. This threw the church and the guild into panic. They decided no one was allowed to go until they could mount a counteroffensive and get together a very strong skilled team together. The head priest even made sure the elders were alerted of it. The head priest contacted everyone they knew and said that Egg and S-Rank needed to address this now. And after all, the elves in the key were clearly protected by something formidable, dangerous, and foreboding. They were surprised that something like this could spawn so quickly. They already started talking about the rumors about the return of the Dark Lord Arachne herself. They wondered what sort of vile, monstrous creature or a great evil demon was responsible for this. A short time later, in a local guild hall, in a small town just outside the forest, was a place, mostly populated by hunters and craftsmen. There was a guild hall where a couple of mysterious people came in. They looked like a human who wore a black cape with a top and a worn top on, and a young lady who was clad in red and black mage outfit with a bat brooch. The guild hall owner said, "What can I do for you?" The guild hall receptionist said, "What can I do for you?" With most of the guild not really paying attention, after all, they were both worn and shabby looking, and a young lady looked like a beginner mage. The male human who was actually a Grand Mason disguised and said, "I'd like to register as an adventurer along with my teammates." End of part 1. Alright, now let's go look for somebody to raid since we're done. Alright, now. Oh wait, let's see. Alright, now let's go with raid Ryun_. Alright, now. Thank you guys for watching. I hope you had plenty of fun. Remember to fly like bat and shine like the moon, for we are stuff dreams are made of. And thank you very much for listening and watching. And I will do more story time later in the week. Alright, now, if you want me to read Indumati's lore, you let me know, okay? Or if you want me to continue with this, I will do it. Moonbat raid. Goodbye.